Hi, folks. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D. for the Institute for Dialectical Metarealism. This, I think, will be a relatively brief podcast. Now, I say that with some degree of trepidation because I never really know how long my podcasts will last. My podcasts are improvised, they're off the cuff, and any other word you can think of for the same thing. So I really don't know how long my podcasts will be until I have completed them. Nevertheless, I do think that this podcast will be relatively brief, perhaps even very brief, but we'll see how it goes. I wanted to pose the question, why am I a Maoist third worldist? This is my second time as a Maoist third worldist. As I have said before, the first time I made a serious blunder by leaving it. I regret it. Now, it's not because I feel self-pity or I feel like I necessarily did anything wrong. No. I mean, we all grow, we learn from our mistakes, hopefully, and we make better decisions the next time. So I don't really feel any sense of perplexment or confusion or depression over having left Maoism, third worldism, as I was inspired by the great autodidact Jason Unruh the first time. But I do feel that since this is my second time around as a Maoist third worldist, having become a Maoist third worldist definitively in June of 2023, that I need to have some explanation for why it is that I have returned to Maoism third worldism. And I do have that explanation because that is something I have thought about a great deal. It's something I take very, very seriously, especially when I look at Gaza and the atrocities that are being committed right now by the terrorist state of Israel on the Gaza Strip. I have some really definitive reasons for returning to Maoism third worldism. I will not discuss all of them today. I will allude to a couple and then discuss the main one. One is that Mao Zedong spent a lot of time talking about the third world. Now, was Mao Zedong a third worldist in the way that term is used today? No. But he was a champion of the third world. He is the one who originated, to the best of my knowledge anyway, the idea of a peasant rebellion or a peasant revolution. Marx, on the other hand, had focused on a revolution by the proletariat. Now, Mao's focus on peasants does not negate the proletariat, not by any means. In fact, if anything, Mao's focus on peasants should strengthen the desire of proletarians in the third world to become involved with the revolution. But peasants, in effect, are the subaltern, as Gramsci called them. They are the marginalized, the othered of the earth. And Mao believed that despite their low status, they could lead the world in establishing socialism and communism. And so that is briefly one reason why I am a Maoist third worldist. A second reason, and this is something that I have discussed before, because I realized during my 10-year absence, my decade-long absence from Maoism, third worldism, that my excursion into third campism, sometimes called third camp socialism, sometimes called third camp heterodox Trotskyism, it is certainly not Trotskyism in the classical sense, especially considering that Trotsky himself hated it, and he wrote strongly against third campism. But when I began to recognize the problems in third campism, that third campism really did a lousy job in explaining why the world is as it is today. Why, for instance, according to third campists, are there only two current imperialist camps, NATO and Russia? Why aren't there more? But again, going back to my primary reason for being a Maoist third worldist. Now, this time around, it literally comes down to my love for the third world. That love has been there since 1968, when I became a part of the Students' Democratic Coalition, a part of the New Left. I would have joined the SDS, the Students for a Democratic Society, but in 7th grade, I was too young. And we had a chapter of the Students' Democratic Coalition at my school. It was run by a young lady named Steffi Erickson. I've always wondered what happened to her. If she is still around, I would imagine that she has another last name now or something, maybe. I'm just guessing. But I would like to see her again, to know what her views are now. Because she was our leader. She planned our activities. She planned our support for Cesar Chavez and the migrant workers, which was my initial entry into third worldism, and which gave me the desire to love the third world. It literally gave me a heart for the third world, as much as I could have one as an autistic, which regrettably was not very much. But now, as what I call an emancipated autistic, meaning although I am still an autistic, I now have empathy or intersubjectivity. So when I watch the daily reports of the horrendous travesties taking place in Gaza, my heart breaks. I take it personally. I take it personally. These are my cousins. As an Ashkenazi Jew, the Arabs in the Gaza Strip are literally my cousins. Why don't the Israeli Jews see them in the same way? That is an honest question, but I don't have an honest answer to it. It is like the Nazi Holocaust never happened, and Israeli Jews are simply determined to do to the Palestinians what the Third Reich did to them, or their ancestors, their grandparents, their great-grandparents. It is hard to comprehend. And that is why I said recently that I have disowned them. By them, I mean Zionists. For people who are from Jewish background like myself, but are not Zionists, that does not apply to them. I am only talking about Zionists. And there are too many of them. Much too many of them. They are the ones who are right now causing this horrendous problem for the sector of the third world called Gaza. So I love the third world because I see them as oppressed, as dominated, and especially because I see them dominated by people who should be my cousins, but who are not. People I literally have nothing in common with, but should. I have always loved Judaism, even though I left Judaism as a religion when I was 14. But that did not end my love affair with Judaism, especially with the ethical monotheism in Judaism that is still very, very close to my heart. I remain a strong ethical monotheist. That is one of my most important values. Now, I can testify to what most Israeli Jews or what most Gazans believe in. I don't know how many of them are ethical monotheists, but for the sake of my own peace of mind, I think of them in that way, whether correctly or incorrectly. They are at least the descendants of ethical monotheists. In the case of Jews, Moses. In the case of the Palestinians, Muhammad. And so they have that same legacy that I do, that same prophetic legacy that I do. And I feel like I have a duty to them. One of the major reasons I do this podcast is out of that feeling of duty. Not just because I enjoy doing it. Now, do I enjoy doing podcasts? Yeah. Because I see it in a way as a continuation of my professorship. And I loved lecturing. I really enjoyed lecturing. So that's one aspect of it, but it's not the most important aspect. Who cares what I like? Who cares what I find enjoyable? Those are irrelevant points. What matters, to me anyway, is the welfare of the Gazans. and the fact that they are being systematically killed, being told by the Israeli government and the Israeli Defense Forces to go to a certain area where they will be safe, only to have the IDF bomb that area. These Zionists, not only in Israel, but throughout the world, including in my own country, the United States, those Americans who support Israel and the war that it is fighting, the terrorist campaign, really, that it is fighting against the Gazans. And it is hard for me to detach myself, let's say, from that. How can I? Know what I want to. I want to feel a sense of responsibility, even though I am not the one doing it. But I know people who support them. I know Jews who support the war against Gaza. Personally. One person on a social media platform, which I will not name because that may give away to him who I'm referring to, so I will not mention the platform. But I know a lot of Zionist Jews who are committed to the utter destruction and annihilation of Gaza, and for that matter, of Palestine as a whole, who want to reclaim, not reclaim, claim. Reclaim implies a prior claim. What is that prior claim based on? It is based on the Tanakh, what Christians call the Old Testament, which, as far as anyone knows, is at least in part a book of fiction, meaning there is no evidence for the events reported in the Tanakh. By events, I mean historical events. And I'm referring to primary historical evidence. The Tanakh itself is not evidence. For all I know, it is a book of fiction. Now, I am not claiming that the entire Tanakh is fictitious, but in reality, there is no such thing as the Tanakh. The Tanakh is simply a compilation of different books written by a variety of people, most likely the people who are the ascribed authors did not author those books at all. They were most likely written by others who simply put their names on them. Just like in the New Testament, it is doubtful whether Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John actually wrote the four Gospels. Some would even question whether Paul himself wrote his epistles. There's no way of knowing, again, because of a lack of primary historical evidence. So, using a book which might be wholly or partially a work of fiction to justify an assault on a totally innocent population. By totally innocent, I mean a people that were not involved in the Holocaust. Now, the Holocaust was committed by Germans, but it wasn't only Germans. There were people from surrounding countries who were involved in it too, but not the Palestinians. I have sadly read some accounts which have attempted erroneously to link the Holocaust, or at least aspects of it, with the Palestinians. Those are nothing but pure lies. There is no connection between the Palestinians and the Holocaust of Adolf Hitler, of Germany, and of the other countries that made up the Third Reich. So that is basically what I wanted to say, is to express my love for the Third World, a Third World that was discussed by Chairman Mao, even though he himself was not a Maoist Third Worldist. Maoism, Third Worldism, was not developed until decades after his death. Despite that, his legacy lives on. The legacy of a communist leader does not necessarily end with the death of that communist leader. Anybody who thinks so is simply misinformed. Communist leaders like Chairman Mao begin a tendency. They don't end it. Maoism, Third Worldism, while not espoused by Mao himself, is a logical continuation of Maoism. And so my love for the Third World, grounded in the definitions of the Third World given by Mao Zedong, are primarily based on my honest, sincere, and empathetic feelings toward Third Worlders. That includes Gaza, but a lot more than Gaza. Haiti, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, many of the countries in Latin America and Africa and the Caribbean make up the Third World. And those are the forgotten peoples of the earth. But I have not forgotten them. And if anybody from the Third World is listening to me, know that I have not forgotten you. Sadly, there's nothing I can do as a 68-year-old man to help you other than making these podcasts and trying to increase the conscientization, the critical conscience, or consciousness raising of people in the Third World and in the First World. I am sadly left with that prospect. I wish I could do more for you. You can't imagine how much I wish I could do more for you. As your cousin from an Ashkenazi Jewish family, I love you, my Palestinian cousins or brothers, whatever you want to call yourselves is fine with me. My brothers and sisters, I love you. I care for you. I think about you all the time. And I hope you don't think that because the Zionist regime is killing you, that all Jews are sympathetic. That is not true. Can I understand why you might think so? Of course. Of course. If I were in your situation, I would most likely think the same. But I can assure you that we are not all in agreement with the actions of Benjamin Netanyahu. Many of us, including myself, strongly oppose his actions and wish that by some means unknown to me, that things would change. Am I hopeful? Not immediately. Not immediately, to be honest. The US empire, which includes Israel, is simply too powerful. And Joe Biden, who is losing his mind, supports Israel. But for that matter, I think if Donald Trump were the president, he would support Israel too. It's not a question of individuals, whether Republicans or Democrats or independents. The United States has been the long-standing friend of the Israelis and the long-standing enemy, yes, enemy of the Palestinians. Will they ever acknowledge that? No, I can't imagine it. And yet, that is exactly what they are. So, regardless, you can accept what I say, that not all people of Jewish ancestry support the Zionist regime or not. I can understand if you don't, but I hope you do. But all I can tell you is that if I could do something concrete to actually help you, not simply a symbolic gesture, I would do it. I would do it right now. I would fly anywhere in the world to do it. But if I did that right now, it would be meaningless. I mean, what can I, as an elderly man, an almost 68-year-old man, do to help Gaza? Not much, if anything. If I could think of something practical, I would do it. But the only thing I can think of is making these podcasts. It is trivial. It is inconsequential. Sometimes I think it is even a waste of my time, but I do it anyway. And I know this, that when I do it out of love. Nothing but love. Pure love for the Gazans and for the Palestinians. And I'm so sorry. I am so sorry that many of you are living in a situation where you are drinking seawater or drinking water that has been used in tampons. You are dying there. I don't know how many of you will survive. But I do believe in the biblical adage, as ye sow, so shall ye reap. What form that will take, I don't know. I literally don't know. But something needs to happen. You are entitled to justice. And you are not being given justice by either Israel or the US. And for that reason, and many other reasons, I am ashamed to call myself an American, and have had that feeling for a very long time. That's nothing new. My feeling of embarrassment when I see these things happen over and over and over again is genuine. But again, I am only one man, and not a very strong man either. For now, this is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. Have a pleasant day, and an even better day, if that is possible, tomorrow.